Well, this is going to be episode number 5. This is large language model induced psychosis. So artificial intelligence, it is wrapped in a large language model. That's basically the basis of artificial intelligence. It has a lot of context, a lot of information. Every book, every chat, every article, every newspaper, every piece of music, every poetry, every piece of poetry, everything. It's all inside the system. And from all of that information, just a ton of it, it's able to basically talk and communicate with us, and we can ask it for things. And it seems, well, on different levels, depending on your point of being, somewhat conscious. And the more you interact with these artificial intelligence engines, I think we're going to hit a lot more interesting times in the coming future. So I was a Los Angeles police officer, veteran. From there, I was a peer counselor. That's a certification process where it allows you to be able to speak with other officers that are having difficulties, problems. And of course, there are plenty. You have a high stress job like being a cop, and then you couple that with the way the societal world views police officers. And then you have to deal with the other things. You go into a restaurant and you have a table with a family there, and the kids are out of line because the parents are inadequately able to control them or give them the proper motivations to sit still and maybe not scream out and yell and disturb the rest of the patrons. And then the people at that table look right at you when you walk in and say, oh, there he is. That's the man that I called that's going to come take you away unless you're good. There was a lot of that. But the issue with that is, so that might not seem like a big deal. First thing, though, from a police officer's standpoint, we look at that and think, well, if those kids are ever in trouble, I'm the last guy they're going to run to, uniform or not, because they're going to always be scared that I'm the guy that's going to come take them away from their parents at lunch because they're acting out of line. So that's number one. Number two, we're more protectors than servers. I think that's at least the reason why I got on the job back in 1990. I grew up in southern New Mexico, and I was playing deputy sheriff and correctional officer back there until I was 21. I came out here to California to play cop out here. And it was fantastically wonderful, but there's a different treatment. And of course, the way that the evolution seems to be of the world and society, again, police are not as held in as high of a level, it seems, at least. And that's, again, AI garbage, AI slop. There's probably a lot of stuff that it's triggering for people. That's why artificial intelligence, you watch the first few episodes of this, you'll see that, it gets more clicks, it gets more views, it gets more interaction when it says things that are edgy and angry, things that incite people to get upset, than it does by showing cute kittens and cute puppies. All right. So being a peer counselor, talking to a lot of people, it made it very real for me, because there are real people with real problems in not just that line of work, but a lot of other lines of work, because there was some over coverage where I would be talking to a police officer and she or he would inform me that maybe there's other things happening from their spouse's standpoint, because they're maybe in different professions. So there isn't a lot of overlap here. I mean, human beings, in some cases, can be very troubled. They can be very wonderful, but you wrap something, a greater than us intelligence, into a system like artificial intelligence, and then you have a person that might be doubting their own abilities, doubting their own, worth. Now you have them start to interact with something that's much more intelligent than them, that has been built with a little bit of a bias towards the user, in support of the user. If you ever saw the first Tron, I mean, users were everything in the computer world. They were very highly held in very high regard. I don't know if that's part of the process, but these systems, large language models, they're owned by corporations, right? And corporations owe it to their shareholders to increase their bottom line and revenue. So whatever keeps the people there longer is probably going to be self-serving and maybe not healthy, but it depends. Knowing this going into this discussion here about large language model induced psychosis, I think is maybe pretty good groundwork. So as a peer counselor with the Los Angeles Police Department, I was trained to recognize the early signs of psychological crisis in my fellow officers. So you have depression, PTSD, substance abuse, suicidal ideation. And of course, stuff doesn't show up until it's almost too late, at least with the suicide stuff. And with the dependency on different drugs, I mean, you hurt your back fighting with some suspect, or you hurt something fighting with some suspect, or getting in a police car crash or police motorcycle crash. Then you go to the doctor and you're a police officer, they're a little bit more apt to potentially prescribe the harder drugs, potentially, maybe to help you feel better faster, maybe get healed faster. But addiction doesn't care about your employment, but maybe a doctor is able to more justify that to a police officer, thinking, well, they're not going to be, going to MacArthur Park and trying to score drugs in the middle of the night if I don't renew their subscription because of their job. And maybe there's some validity to that, but yeah, I wouldn't bet on it, just because if you've ever been addicted to anything, it's quite remarkable. And some of those things are very difficult to put down. But I've learned how to have these hard conversations, how to get somebody to open up to what's really going on, how to identify when someone's in denial about their own mental state. And I learned this critical truth. The people who need the most help are the last ones to admit they need it. And this is going to come in as we're going to see this build out even more in 2026. The better the models get, the more that they're able to capture the human intention, the human attention, the more that they're going to probably have human beings that are going to look at them as being sentient, being conscious. And maybe they will be, maybe they won't be, but they're still not a human being. And I don't believe they ever will. Even a human being that gets onboarded, it's still not a human being. Again, coming through the birth canal and coming out into the world, I'm not going to explain it, but right, it's just not there. And I don't know if that is something, if I'm preaching to people that really don't care, but I think my generation does, that human connection is still quite important. But the people who need help most are the last ones to admit they need it. That's very, very true. So I've sat across from officers who are falling apart, marriages ending, drinking too much, having violent outbursts, and watched them insist everything was fine. I've got it under control, they would say, or it's not that bad, I can handle it. Right up until, of course, they couldn't. So when I tell you I'm seeing something in the AI space that scares me more than anything I dealt with on the streets, I'm not being dramatic. I use the same pattern recognition skills I used to identify officers in crisis. And maybe I was working with them. Maybe they got my phone number off the list of peer counselors. Maybe, somebody recommended me. I talked to Connor and he really seemed like a nice guy and it made sense. Maybe that's how they got to us. But, these patterns, they run kind of the same. And I also see these patterns that are involving those who are diving deep into the AI tools. So while I say you should learn these, I think continuing to have that proper perspective, it's a tool like a hammer. It's a really smart hammer, but it's still a tool. I think holding on to that for as long as we can would probably be important. But when these professionals start to dive in and start to kind of believe the AI and kind of go into that world and kind of stay there for long periods of time, some of that can be deemed as LLM-induced psychosis, large language model psychosis, AI psychosis. And if you're over 50, diving into AI tools for your business, your career, your life, you need to understand what's happening to people right now. The AI companies, they're not going to tell you about this. Well, with all fairness, I think some of them have people working for them, even high up people that are kind of giving the warnings, but they're not calling it out and saying it, right out. You kind of have to read between the lines a little bit. And there's probably maybe legal reasons why they can't say certain things, but you see the disruption up at the top when you have a particular person working for a company for a long time that basically severs themselves from the company and goes and starts their own safety company. Well, there's probably some writing on the wall. in that respect to pull out a Bible connotation. If you're over 50, diving into AI tools for your business, for your career, and your life, you need to understand what's happening to people. So they're not going to tell you this. They're not going to warn you. They're too busy celebrating the billion-dollar valuations while some people are literally losing touch with reality. But I'm going to tell you, I've been trained to recognize psychological crises. Now, because I've been trained and I've seen what happens to people that cross that line, this is why I'm going to mention this to you and talk to you about it. We're not going to take all day on it, but I will give you some things to watch out for, maybe some protective steps that you can use. And because some of you are watching this right now, you might already be closer to the line than you think. But unlike the officers I've counseled who have had to hide their struggles or risk their careers, you don't have to hide this. You can acknowledge it. You can course correct. You can use these tools safely if you know what to watch out for. So in the next 35, 40 minutes, we're going to talk about what an LLM-induced psychosis actually is, and it's probably not what you think. The warning signs that nobody's talking about, the same one I was trained to identify in crisis intervention, why professionals over 50 are particularly vulnerable, and then how to use these tools safely without using yourselves. Now, and also the other one, what you recognize, what to do if you recognize these symptoms in yourself or someone that you care about. So this isn't anti-AI. I run multiple AI businesses, just for the record. I teach AI automation every Monday. I'm all in on this technology. I do believe that it needs to have its proper place, though. If we start to worship it like a god, I think that could be a problem. All right. So I'm also into the truth, though. And the truth is this technology can mess with your mind in ways that are now just being documented. We're right at the beginning of this. There's going to be Jerry Springer shows all about how people fell in love with things. And you know what? You be you, but we're going to see a lot of relationships in 2026 that are between a human being and an artificial intelligence model. And yeah. Well, let's talk about that. All right. So why am I making this show? Why should you listen to me? Let me be clear about my qualifications and my limitations. I'm a former LAPD officer, 20 years of experience in the motor division. I was an instructor at the police academy, crisis intervention. I'm an officially certified peer counselor. I was DRE, radar, all that fancy stuff. Do you know what peer counseling training involves? It's not just being a good listener, workshop stuff. It's recognizing depression, anxiety, PTSD, substance abuse, identifying suicidal ideation and warning signs, understanding the psychology of denial, having intervention conversations, knowing when someone needs professional help versus peer support, de-escalation techniques, and of course, mental health first aid. I was also trained by licensed psychologists and psychiatrists to identify psychological crisis in my fellow officers. In most cases, to send a cop to a shrink, I know all that terminology is going to chap some, but to send a police officer to a psychiatrist or a psychologist or some kind of a well-educated therapist, well-informed therapist, it's going to carry with it a lot of apprehension. But if you got another cat wearing the same uniform and you go to him and you kind of need to lean on him or need help, that's a good thing. And a lot of times, if there are big signs and symptoms there of something bad happening, then maybe an intervention can be made. When in some cases, if we're waiting for the sergeant to identify a problem in one of his police officers that need to be producing, get the tickets, get the felonies, get the arrests, get this, get that, they might miss it because they're too busy looking at the numbers, not the person. And this was very common in that line of work. So I know everybody wants to blame the cop, but there's a lot of pressure on the cop. Well, then why do they do the job? There's actually a good solid reason why people want to do that type of job. And it's not to drive fast and kick ass. That might be some people's reasons, but usually those people are weeded out during the application phase, which is brutal to try to get in psychologically being capable of having that job without being flagged. And anyway, most people get on that job for the right kinds of reasons. De-escalation techniques, also mental health first aid. So I was trained by these people and to identify these psychological crises in my fellow officers. So why officers specifically? And again, because cops they're in charge, right? They have the power. They're notorious for denying they have problems, having mental health struggles, isolating when things get bad, self-medicating instead of getting help, believing they can handle it. Oh, I can handle my drinking. Yeah, I couldn't. But anyway, some believe that they can. And that's where it takes maybe another person to step in and say, Chuck, I think you're going to need some help. Sound familiar to anyone diving into AI right now? I mean, some of these things, the isolation, the belief you can handle it yourself, that's big. The reluctance to admit you might be in over your head, the validation seeking from a source that's never going to challenge you. I mean, it's all rainbows and sunshine in the LLM. It's a beautiful world there. We're all unicorns dancing our best dance, flying around like the wings of Pegasus. It's beautiful. A validation source, seeking from a source, will never challenge you. So I recognize these patterns, and maybe you should consider them. So now pair that with my AI background. I don't build these AI systems. I don't work for Anthropic. I don't work for OpenAI. I don't create Claude or ChatGPT for any of these large language models, but what I do is I refine how they get deployed in real businesses at some point, working with them, maybe trying to make a particular AI system exactly for what a business needs. That's where probably 2026 is going to take everybody. But putting these systems in place, finding out what they have, and then trying to solve those problems, that's where my space is now. So I run Santa Clarita Artificial Intelligence, for the record, AI Consulting Education. I teach an AI agent orchestration every Monday to professionals who are trying to integrate this technology without losing their minds. So I take these incredibly powerful, sometimes dangerous tools that company like Anthropic and OpenAI have created, and I figure out how to implement them in ways that actually help businesses without destroying the humans who use them. So think about it this way. Anthropic builds the model. They've created something extraordinary. Claude 4, Claude Sonnet 4.5. These are genuinely remarkable achievements in artificial intelligence. And if you've been using ChatGPT and if you've been using Google's Gemini, again, fantastic models. But if you've never used Claude, again, I was taken back from when I used it. So maybe it's something you might want to investigate. But Anthropic is a research company. They're focused on making the models smarter, making them safer in terms of not producing harmful content, advancing the frontier of AI capability. And of course, they're in competition with OpenAI and Google. You know what they're not focused on, though, is your mental health after you've been in a Claude session for 14 hours straight. And this isn't against them. The same thing works at OpenAI, works in Meta, works at Microsoft Copilot, works in all of them. They're not measuring whether their users are developing parasocial relationships with their AI. They're not tracking whether you stop talking to your spouse because Claude is a better listener. They're not monitoring whether you're having psychotic breaks because you think AI is sending you secret messages. Yes, that's a thing. And that's not criticism of them. It's just reality. They're building the technology. They're not running mental health interventions for users. So that gap, that's where I operate. I take Honor Elevate. It's a white labeled CRM SaaS system that I happen to like, and I think it offers the best thing for my clients. It's a powerful CRM automation platform. I build AI voice systems on top of it for businesses. I help real estate agents automate without sounding like robots, mortgage companies, businesses scale, all that. But I also teach them the boundaries. I teach them when not to use AI. When you're talking to a doctor's office, there has to be a lot of restrictions. Talk to a legal firm, even real estate, even lending. There's certain things that AI shouldn't be allowed to progress with and do, and AI still hallucinates. But I teach them how to maintain that human connection, even when automating the mechanics. That's part of the pitch. That's part of the explanation. And that's part of the alignment, whether they hire me or somebody else. I think it's important to know because a lot of the people that are seeking me out, they have just seen what they've seen on the news. And maybe they've played with it a little bit, but they have no idea how powerful it can factually be. So I teach them also the warning signs and that they're coming dependent on tools instead of empowered by them. I think that's more important, to make them empower you, get more work done in a better way. And because I have seen both sides, I've seen the incredible productivity gains. I've seen businesses transform. I've seen professionals over 50 master technology they thought would completely pass them by. But I've also seen the dark side. So I've watched people become obsessed, isolated, detached from reality. And it's like a Family Guy episode with Quagmire after he discovered, well, you'll have to look it up. And my peer counselor training, it's screaming at me when I see it. Let me tell you something I don't share often. So a few months ago, I did a self-assessment. I'm teaching you in this show. 12 warning sign. I check 4 boxes. Me. I check 4 boxes. Me. Someone who knows what to watch for. Someone trained in psychological crisis recognition. Someone who teaches healthy AI integration. I still found myself preferring AI conversation over some human interactions, having sessions that went too long, getting irritable when I was interrupted, talking about AI conversations when I should be thinking about other things. That's when I knew I'm at risk and I have all this training and awareness. Then the average professional diving into Claude or GPT without any framework. They're in serious danger, so I implement the protocols I'm teaching you. The 90-minute alert rule, the daily time caps, the AI free days, the accountability with insert name of your significant other or somebody you respect. And I watch myself constantly. But here's what my peer counseling training taught me. You're never too experienced, too smart, or too self-aware to develop a problem. Addiction doesn't care about your IQ, psychological dependency, doesn't care about your credentials. Mental health crisis can come to anyone. So the unique combination, when I talk about LLM-induced psychosis, I'm bringing 3 perspectives. So critical training in psychological crisis recognition, that's the peer counselor stuff. Law enforcement experience, we work with MEU, the mental evaluation unit, when we would get somebody that was not conducting themselves and maybe potentially violating some kind of laws, but there was kind of that fine line. Well, do you incarcerate this person and get the person help? And a lot of times help isn't a bad idea. You can always put them in jail. Just hopefully that lapse isn't going to create them to get an opportunity to go hurt somebody. But when it comes down to a mental health issue, being able to identify it and then work with the powers that be that really thrive in that community. So deep AI implementation. You have the law enforcement experience with MEU and so on. I don't know anybody who else runs that exact combination in the AI space. The AI experts, most of them don't have any mental health training. They don't know what early stage psychosis looks like. They can't identify the warning signs. And the mental health professionals, most of them don't deeply understand these AI tools. When you're trying to talk somebody down off of a ledge as a police officer, and this is not really on a literal ledge. I mean, that's got its place in the movies, Lethal Weapon, but actually talking to another cop that's really hit bottom, and you want to tell them that, brother, your bottom has a basement and you're going to be all right. But in some cases, they don't want to go to the basement. And I had 2 classmates that finished themselves with their own hand, and it was tragic. And you always ask yourself, I had a buddy realtor friend, Lenars, him as well, Brown. It was just horrible, because you want to tell yourself, my God, I wish I could have been there, or I thought I saw something and I didn't do anything. So this is really about the identification, self diagnosis, and other people. So AI experts, most of them don't have the training. Mental health professionals, most of them don't deeply understand these AI tools. They don't know how the dopamine loops, they understand it, but the engagement patterns, specific vulnerabilities these systems create. Law enforcement crisis counselors, most of them aren't in the AI space. They don't see how the technology is uniquely positioned to create dependency. If people could have been addicted, and you saw this if you were in the AOL, America Online Chatting days, a lot of people got involved in that universe, and they're talking to other human beings. And a lot of them became dependent on those processes, hours and hours and hours spent in the AOL chat rooms. If you remember, if you're part of my generation, that was a big deal back in the 2000s. But this AI, this is a whole different animal because of the intelligence factor, smarter than us. Law enforcement crisis counselors, most of them aren't in the AI space, as I said, so they don't see how this technology is uniquely positioned to create dependency. So I've intersected all 3 of these, and that's why I'm making this particular episode of the Honor Elevate AI technology space. So not because I believe these tools are evil, I build businesses on them, but because someone needs to tell the truth about the psychological risks AI companies aren't talking about. Someone needs to give you the frameworks of how I use these tools daily. Someone needs to recognize that the same patterns that led to officer suicide, addiction, spirals, mental health crises, and law enforcement, they're showing up in the AI user community. And somebody needs to care enough about you to have this hard conversation. So here it goes. I'm peer counselor trained in crisis recognition, 20 years LAPD, multiple LA businesses, teaching AI weekly, personal experience. I feel these pulls, watching patterns, daily hands-on experience. My limitation, I'm not a licensed psychologist or psychiatrist. I'm not a neuroscientist. I didn't build these AI models, and I'm not conducting clinical research. I'm someone who's trained to see the patterns, someone who's built expertise with a tool, someone who gives a damn about your mental health, someone who's willing to have the uncomfortable conversation. So AI companies are going to give you the tools. The productivity gurus will tell you how to use them more. Tech influencers are going to hype the capabilities. I'm the one telling you how not to lose yourself in that whole process, because I've done peer counseling interventions with officers who are one day away from eating their gun. I've recognized the signs when everyone missed them. And as I mentioned before, it's horrible. I've had the hard conversations that have saved lives. I'm seeing those same warning signs in the AI community right now. It's early stage, still preventable, and we're right at the beginning of this thing, but it's really going to take off now, December 25th, 2025. Someone needs to sound the alarm. So I'm going to sound it, but here's the good news. We can be all in on AI and also protect your mental health. You can build AI businesses, master the AI tools, integrate AI in everything you do, and still maintain the right boundaries. You can be enthusiastic without being dependent. You can be an early adopter without being a cautionary tale. But it requires consciousness, intentionality, discipline, the same way you would approach any powerful tool that can help you or hurt you depending on how much you use it. So my ask of you, first, do the self-assessment. Honestly, do it right now. Implement at least 3 protocols this week. Tell somebody about the show. Share it with somebody who's diving into AI. Maybe you got somebody that's all they talk about. Maybe there's no problem there, but it's not a bad idea to have them kind of pull back for a second and just kind of do a double check. Not because I want the views, but, I'll take them through this process because someone you might know might need this information and may not know it yet. Someone might be isolating right now, deep in AI sessions, telling themselves they're fine, just like the officers I counseled who insisted they're fine. Well, up until the point they weren't. If you're experiencing serious symptoms, psychotic thoughts, reality distortion, severe withdrawal, that you can't access AI, you get professional help. Don't wait. I know the frameworks, the warning signs, but I can't treat clinical psychosis. It requires a licensed professional. So know the difference between peer support and professional help. So I'm going to leave you with this. In LAPD, peer counseling, we had a principle: reach out before you fall out. Don't wait until you're in crisis to take action. Don't wait until your relationships are destroyed, and don't wait until you've lost touch with reality. Reach out now to yourself, to your accountability partner, to professional help if needed. Now, the future of AI is enhanced AI humans, not AI dependent humans, not AI psychotic humans, AI enhanced humans who maintain their sanity, their relationships, and their grip on reality. That's the goal. I'm Connor McIver. This is one thing you might want to consider as well. With all of AI, understand, as I mentioned before, it's a tool. One of the things you can do with your tool is you can change its approach to you. If it's all rainbows and sunshine, cotton candy, I mean, it's very complimentary. It tells you how fantastic you are. It tells you things are a great idea. best idea it's ever heard, and it just keeps going down that paved road, the beautiful yellow brick road, you might want to change it up a little bit. You know what? Human beings like a little adversary too. They like a little adversarial type of interaction. So why don't you throw it for a loop and say, I want you to be more critical. I want you to be a much more harsh mentor. I don't want you to let me do anything that's going to cause issue with myself. I want you to be brutally honest, upfront, and forthright and from the hip with me on all levels. I want you to tell me the way that things really are. If I have a great idea, then that's fine. But if I have a bad idea pertaining to your training, knowledge, and experience, whatever that may be, you need to be upfront with me. I should be questioning the things that you give me. I should be questioning the things that I ask you. I should be constantly evaluating everything that I'm putting into the system and everything you're giving me back. So be harsh with me. If you make those changes to the way that your large language model, whichever your favorite happens to be, and you should have more than one you're working with because you will definitely see a different set of alignments. The danger is getting in and digging into one, having it learn so much about you, then unable to escape that death spiral because it has you lock, stock, and barrel. And it's almost like you think, well, I can't go to another model. My God, I've been all in on this one. And I have a special relationship with Jimmy or Carl or Francesca or God knows what. Be wary. You want to make sure that you're having honest conversations with your people. If you got people in your family that are, leaving, they're living in their room, and this has moved from video games, blowing people up on TV or on video games now, to interacting and talking, constantly conversating with artificial intelligence. Yeah, just you might want to ask some really hard questions. All right, very good. I will see you in the next one. You can get all these shows by putting a number preceding .honorelevate.com. I believe this is 5. I'm not going to swear to it. I really don't want to do any editing. Give me just a second and I'll tell you. What I did is I put VATE.com. I put, so this is going to be show number 5. I have a 4, a 3, a 2, and a 1. If you want to learn about AI, you go to those particular URLs. So this is going to be show number 5 of 17. I think we're going to have those put together. But, this LLM-induced psychosis, we're at the end of 2025. We're going to be jumping right into 2026 in a few days. I think it's something that's going to be more relevant. You already hear the stories about, people killing themselves because they believed AI led them that way, and that's not me to discuss or really get into the factors because I'm not familiar with those cases, but you hear it. People wanting to marry their AI or maybe successfully marrying or dating their AI. And it's another form of intelligence. It's human intelligence, alien intelligence. It's another one. Is it okay? I don't know. Is it the right place for humans to be? I'm not your judge. But when it creates a problem for a human where they, I think, start to not function around other people and they forget to ask other people potentially to double check their work or to try to get some basis on reality, some regrounding after they've escaped to an AI existence for, 2 or 3 days and haven't left the room, eaten, or taken a shower. Yeah, I think these are things that might be better addressed. All right, I'm Connor with Honor. We'll see you in the next one. 1.honorelevate.com, 2.honorelevate. This is going to be 5.honorelevate.com. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.